Oh boy, there's not much left on this. There's going to have to be. I have to race things. So in the office, we're young. They were all young and loved to flirt. Their flirting ignited me. It was a wonderful escape, especially for my midlife crisis ego. I was like a kid in a candy shop, enjoying all the company of these business women and the atmosphere created as everyone let their hair down. Of course, we were drinking. I was intoxicated not only with the drinking, but also with the sense of misplaced responsibility. This escape had romance, the power of buying your friends drinks, mixed in with business conversations, formed a legitimacy I had never experienced. I needed help to get around Sarasota and get to know the different procedures in the office. Carolyn, a young married woman who was one of the agents, started helping me. She was intrigued by the innovative ideas I brought to the firm. I suggested that the office allow me to put together a magazine of our listings, and I asked Carolyn to assist me. Before long, we were working together on projects and eventually became partners. The pattern of happy hour drinking was part of what we did, and the risk of problems developing seemed to grow every day. Jackie did not think anything of it at first, but soon complained about my coming home late. I would try to assure her that everything was under control, even though I knew I was playing with fire. It is amazing how I began to run every stop sign. I almost felt it was destiny pulling as I was tired of resisting, or as I tired of resisting. Apparently, I wanted to play on the edge. When I drank, I did not have the presence to evaluate what I was doing. I was expecting to test fate and be rescued from this coming storm before it hit. The thrill was an escape in and of itself. Before I knew it, I was on the make, and Carolyn was with me all the way. She knew all about the game and played it well, and as we both fell into the sensuality of the moment, the temporary guilt could be washed down by a few drinks. The excitement of hiding from the public eye and keeping our spouses in the dark became the code by which we lived. The deeper we got, the more risks we would take. We tried to appear as if we were serious about our work, but how serious could you be when we would have sex in the office after hours, sex in some of the houses we had keys to, and sex in the car when we were supposed to be showing houses? I, of course, was more aggressive in taking these risks, and I became more serious, even though I had the most to lose. Carolyn had no children and very little responsibility. Her husband, a stockbroker, hung around with his drinking buddies. She and her friends partied every weekend. I had a family with children who depended on me, and I was walking a tightrope with no safety net below me. I was getting so caught up in this chase that it began to consume me, and the reality, well, and the reality of this crashing did not seem to matter. My only thought became the desire to run off with Carolyn. Jackie began to become suspicious and asked me one evening if I had ever kissed Carolyn. I admitted to it, and she insisted that I break it off with her immediately. I said I would, but within days we were back at it. The hiding became worse and the drinking more constant. Christmas of 1989 was spent in Ridgefield at Jackie's parents'. The whole time I was there, I wanted to get back to the affair. Jackie and I were so far apart that we must have been sleepwalking in each other's presence. She had no idea what was going on with me. She did not know how close we were to total financial disaster. She was with her family, and that comfort would be enough to sustain her for the moment. The coming months would bring alienation, trauma, and pain like neither of us had ever experienced. When we have an obsessive addiction, the cravings never disappear. When an addiction is a substance, the removal of the substance will help to bring about sobriety. If an addiction comes from the ego's desire to have something for the sake of having it, the addiction becomes an impulsive force. In other words, it is like a vacuum sucking all of the life out of its victim until it crushes its victim like a boa constrictor. I wanted Carolyn, and like Rhett Butler pursuing Scarlett O'Hara, I used every bit of ability that I had to get what I wanted. As a damaged, ego-driven young man chasing girls who did not want him, my old wounds surfaced as a man in midlife, wanting a married woman who was not willing to forsake it all and leave her husband for me. I was bringing the house down on myself, and no one could stop me. In the spring of 1990, the affair was raging, and I was down to my last dime. I called my old friend and mentor, Bruce Morgan. I told him of the affair, hoping he could give me some meaning, and wonder if there was pardon for me in the eyes of the Lord. He simply said that a man has needs, and if they are not met in a marriage, a man will often try to have his needs met elsewhere. At that, I broke down and cried, knowing I blamed myself for everything. Yes, I had picked up the gun. Yes, I had pulled the trigger. But was I like the woman caught in adultery? Should I have been stoned to death? I could not justify what I was doing, but was I the only wretch in town? I could use all of these thoughts to bring about some justification, but justification was hard to find. Guilt would drive me to the ground. I had to face the reality that I had failed in my vow to God to keep my marriage in the holiness of morality. In my self-righteousness, I thought I had gained control over my immoral behavior of the past. By my will alone, I thought I could overcome this dreadful lifestyle. Now I knew I needed God's mercy. Only His mercy and grace could expose this darkness within me, revealing it to me and bringing about real change. But I discovered that mercy could not come until I was driven into total helplessness. Driven into the darkness, the light continues to shine in the darkness, for the darkness never overpowered it. Where was God during this prodigal journey? I was not sure I wanted to know. Bruce was hosting a gathering in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I decided to go. He called these events the schools of life, and I expected to find some answers by attending. I might have expected too much and found myself looking for support from those around me. Many of the people there were wounded in their own way, and I found it hard to share what I was doing with people who could not relate. There I saw my old friend John Tobin, but he was preoccupied with other things, like normal, like usual. He was there, but he was never there. He found it hard to agree with what I was doing because he had a certain affinity toward Jackie. Bruce did not judge me, which was what I needed, and his new wife Nancy was eager to do some counseling to show off her spiritual insights. I left Wyoming somewhat disillusioned, but determined to make a move one way or another. The trip used the last credit I had, and there was now no income. Returning home, I decided to move to a cheap hotel room so I could continue the affair without having to sneak around. I thought this move would be a signal to Carolyn to do the same, but she panicked. Instead, she ran back to the shelter of a husband who had no clue this affair was going on. This became the hook that would drag me to the bottom of neurotic despair. I was now obsessed with wanting Carolyn more than anything on earth. Her parents had gotten wind of our affair and wanted her to go to Vermont to be alone and get away for a while. I was becoming emotionally distraught as the events continued to unfold. While I was living at the hotel, Jackie would bring the kids and we would swim in the pool. We talked about what was happening, but I was never sure how she really felt. I know she wanted me to come back to the family, but somehow I never got the impression that anything would ever change. The thought of going back, living in a life where I was playing a part, convinced me that this was no option at all. The innocence of the children would weigh heavily upon me, and I could not shake my obligation to them. Rather than dealing with it, I became preoccupied with trying to win Carolyn. I accepted the opportunity to move into an empty house temporarily. The loneliness was unbearable. The previous owners had pets, and one night, as I was sleeping, I was attacked by fleas. It was a nightmare. All night long, the battle raged, and I thought this must be the just punishment for my immoral behavior. I felt like these were the demons let loose to torture me for my sinful lifestyle. How had I fallen so low? I had given up my family for this? I could be with them, but instead I chose to pine for a married woman who did not want to leave her security for me. It would only get worse as my world continued to crumble. Page 68. Now I gotta upload this and erase a lot of stuff. Bye-bye.